Welcome, everybody. I am Camille Sargi, the broker owner of Gold Door Realty, and this is Just 2 Minutes. Today I have Tanner. Tanner, you want to tell us about yourself?
Yes, my name's Tanner Guimond. I'm the owner of a company called Green Home Solutions, where we specialize in making houses healthy again. So we do everything from basement waterproofing to mold remediation, radon mitigation, air duct cleaning, anything that can make a house, turn itself around and have a healthier life.
So basically you just put a smile on a house.
I try to. Yeah. A metaphorical smile.
Okay. That's good. Yeah. Homes like to smile.
Indeed. They do. Yeah.
But some of them just like...
some of them just need to go to bed permanently.
Wow. Okay.
That does happen. I don't like to walk into those situations, but it does happen. Yeah.
All right. So this show is called Just 2 Minutes, and it's basically just 2 minutes of random questions.
Okay.
And then we go into the topic for today.
Okay.
Are you ready? And go. Common question. What's your favorite color?
Probably green.
Green. So if you could use green hair dye on a dog, where would you go shopping with that dog?
I mean, anywhere. We live in 2024. Green-haired dogs should be acceptable everywhere.
No specific place you would bring the green dog?
I mean, to have I don't know. I'd say maybe I think it would be a hell of a place. Or bringing my dog to a bar, maybe would have a lot of good conversations that night. I don't know.
Okay. What's your favorite store?
Oh, that's a tough question. That's tough, right? I mean, I don't know. Does it have to be an in-person store? Does it have to be one that I physically go to?
If you say Hot Topics, I'm not going to judge you.
I'm not a Hot Topic guy, actually. Never was, never will be, even though I love that kind of music. This is going to sound crazy. Dave's Marketplace.
Wow, cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So what job would you do at Dave's Marketplace? If you could pick any job.
Their pizza department looks like it's a good time. It really does. It looks like they have a lot of fun back there. So I think I'd try that.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Do you think cave people made soup?
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, if they're in a cave, they've got rocks and maybe the rocks are shaped as bowls and maybe they figured out a thing or two.
What kind of soup do you think they discovered first or made?
I feel like it has to be some sort of bisque. I don't know why. Some sort of bisque, probably something heavy, hearty. That sounds about right.
Elf or leprechauns?
Elf.
I was going to say elf, leprechauns. They're both green. It's funny that I put down elf.
Yeah, that is actually really weird. I'd say elf. I mean, I like the magic and, I don't know. I think that'd be a little bit better of a bet. I don't know. Elf. Yeah.
Cool. I think subconsciously I was looking at the green. You were thinking green. And,
Yep.
There's so many crazy tricks. But
synchronicities as well.
Yeah. But anyways, aside from horsing around, today I want to talk about water in basements because water ends up in basements.
Oh, yeah.
What's the number one reason there is water in basements from what you guys see?
I would say, aside from placement of the house and a high water table, gutters, man. I could tell you more often than not, I have a couple of different gutter companies I work with hand in hand very often. It's a lot of the times they're not discharging the right way. A lot of people think, okay, the gutters, they're fine if they're on the roof and they have a downspout, but if the downspout ends right in the corner of the building, general rule of thumb is you want to keep any water from building up at least 10 feet away from the entire perimeter of the house. So very often when I go to a home and I see that they're having water entering the basement, the first thing we actually do is do an outdoor assessment, see if the gutters look okay. If they're not, we tell the client to go and reach out to a gutter company to fix that first. And then, everyone has a different temperament with the situation, right? If they're just done with the water in their basement, they might want to say, yeah, do the gutters and put a sump pump in at the same time. But I do like to do things in baby steps. I think it just makes sense if we can afford to. So, gutters is a number one thing that a lot of people just don't even think about.
Yeah, I've seen that too. where it's not level. It's aiming the other way. The water is going that way, and you're aiming
I see that all the time. People don't realize that gutters don't have pressure to them. So when the water is falling down, it's just going with gravity. So if you have, a 6-foot discharge line at the bottom of the downspout, but the discharge line's like this, that water's just building up in the corner and eventually going to break through and then cause more problems. I see that all the time.
Yeah. Horrible.
Yeah.
So that's an easy fix for someone who's like, why is there water?
Yep.
Just walk outside and look at it.
You're talking less than $100 if you have 4 downspouts, typically that's most houses. You're talking less than $60 to fix that on your own, if you go out and do it on your own. But if you haven't got a company, even better, right? But you're going to pay a little bit more. Yeah.
What's another reason?
Grading. Very often I see the second big reason, again, high water table being the real number one. The soft number 2 and 3, if you will, would be the gutters, and the grading is just, people have houses, they're at the bottom of a hill, or say they have a garden that surrounds their home. They don't realize that if your soil isn't pitched away from your house, as water falls, it's going to push inward towards the building. So I see that a lot too. Another thing that ends up happening more often than not with my inspections is that, okay, I see the gutter issue, and then I also, usually they're almost hand in hand, I see the grading issue. So it's okay, now you need to reach out to a gutter person, or just, get the extenders for the downspouts themselves, and or they need to reach out to a landscaper to do some grading corrections so that when the water falls, it hits a slope on the soil that's pushing the water away from the house.
Yeah. Yeah. Because these heavy rains, this makes pools in random places.
And that's something that, grading is something that as a homeowner, you really need to be careful with, because over time, like you said, it's like if you get a really heavy rainy season, that's going to change some of the topography around your home. So you need to be very aware of that. As water falls, it's messing with the soil, it's messing with mulch or whatever. And sometimes it creates little streams. Sometimes it creates little pockets where little puddles are building up. You just have to be very aware of that.
Okay. Well, what's another reason?
Another reason to get water in the basement aside from those, again, high water table being that one. But if you have a new build or, new landscape is happening around your home, say like I do with a lot of houses that are, at the bottom of a hill, right? So if you're at the bottom of a hill and you have a new landscape development, sometimes that new development can change the way the water is going to be flowing off of that hill. I see that happen a lot. Ultimately, what's really allowing water into a house is really just what we call hydrostatic pressure. It's water fundamentally building up against the house. And there's a lot of ways that can happen. It's the grading, it's the downspouts, it's where is the water coming from originally? Is it coming from up a hill or up a mountain? A lot of people that I deal with on the coast, right? So I do a lot of work from, Newport all the way around the Cape and up to Boston. Those are a lot of, high priority areas when it comes to having a high water table. Sea level rising is a big thing. That is a factor with a lot of water getting into people's basements and crawl spaces right now too.
I've talked to a few people and actually saw a few homes that are in flood zones and downpours, and there's so much water they can't do anything. It's like water is coming in.
Can't exactly put it anywhere.
Yeah, it's kind of like development around it changed the way the water flows, and it's like it's going into their basement.
Yep, I see that all the time too.
Yeah. So in that situation where the basement is flooded, above, going up to the first floor, what do you do in that situation?
Well, that's a good question, right? It just depends on, can I put the water anywhere? If you're telling me, Tanner, this is a house in, let's say, Westport, right on the coast, their basement's flooded and you go outside and it's water everywhere, what are you going to do? You still do want to have a system in place to remove that water from building up that what's called hydrostatic pressure against the property. So even though it might sound kind of, silly, ideally you want a sump pump or multiple sump pumps inside your basement that can continue to push the water out. Maybe you're pushing a cup of water out and inviting 4/5 of a cup back in, but it's better to keep that pressure from building up. Because if that water keeps pushing and pushing and pushing against the foundation, inevitably you could talk about some serious structural issues, major cracks in the foundation or the only way you might be able to repair it is by quite literally lifting the building and repouring the foundation.
Oh, goodness.
You're better off just, letting your sump pump go crazy and keep dishing out that water out of the house, even if some of it is coming back in, because at least you're removing the pressure that can cause bigger problems.
So if you can't even, if it's dry outside, the flood stopped, the flooding from the rain. How do you get into the basement it's flooded right up to the...
Yeah. So if a client called me and said, hey, Tanner, we got a nasty hurricane, a flood happened, everywhere around my house and the outside's dry, but on the inside of my house, I still have inches or a foot or a couple of feet of water. At that point, we're going to do some water ejection, right? We're going to put some tools in place to actually pump the water out of the house. Okay. Before we get in there to actually put in whatever we need to put in, sump pumps, French drains, whatever have you.
But if you can't get into the basement, do you break the basement window, and throw a pump in there?
You should be able to get into the basement. I mean,
if it's all the way up to
I'll tell you this. There hasn't been a basement I haven't been able to access in the 10 years of doing this. But if that did happen, I guess, it would either, again, I'm thinking what are we talking about here? We're talking about Florida after a category 5 and there's water up to the bottom of the first floor. If so, then scuba suit maybe. But at that point, I don't know. I hate to say it, but that's one of those ones where the house has to get put to bed maybe, permanently. There are jobs that, are just beyond what we are capable of managing. That does happen. Sounds like you're kind of leading me in the direction of maybe one of those. But again, I've been in houses now, especially after, we're filming this in late 2024. In late 2023 and early 2024, we had those two really, really nasty, kind of once in a lifetime type storms that came in, and inches and inches and inches of rain were pouring each day. We were in houses in the middle of installing French drains and sump pumps that had 2 feet of water in it. And all you can do is, like you said, throw a couple of sump pumps basically loosely into the environment and get, a line that can eject that water very far away from the house so that you can drain all of that, put in some high powered dehumidifiers in place to dry everything else out, and then get back to work and start, cracking through the concrete and, setting up your French drain or your sump pumps.
Goodness. Okay. So that's, I've seen basements like that where you couldn't even check out the basement because the basement's all the way up to the stairs. Yeah. So I throw my phone camera, look around in there.
Yep.
What about cracks in the foundation?
Mm-hmm. What about?
Talk about that. How do you guys fix those?
So, the first thing to tackle with a crack is you should understand why it's there in the first place, right? Put you like this right now, we're actually at a job in Stowe and they had a crack. And the reason for the crack was their downspouts and their grading, right? They had terrible grading. They had their landscapers designed a full perimeter garden, right, around the house, snug right up against the house. But it was never really maintained. And over time, the previous homeowners who have lived there for 40 years never really did anything to the mulch or the soil. And so eventually over time, as your house sits there for decades, it does slowly move the earth around it. And so earth will start to kind of cave in a little bit. And so that's what happened there. They had downspouts that were draining right into the corner of the property. Water just went into that kind of, spot that was created against the foundation and where the grading of the soil is starting to dip towards the foundation. And so water was building up there. So to answer your question, the first thing we want to do is address why did that crack appear? And whatever we can do to fix that, whether it's me having to call, a third party company that I know is good at what they do, being like a landscaper or a gutter specialist, or whatever it is, we got to figure that out first. Sometimes you're fighting an uphill battle that you're not going to win. Maybe you're just on the coast, water table's rising, and you just need a sump pump to actually remove that pressure. There's no grading option. There's no downspout option. It's just, all right, the water's here and what can I do with it? At that point, usually you're talking about putting at the very least a sump pump system in that's generally located rather close to where that crack is forming, because you want that pump to pull that pressure off of that area so that the crack doesn't get any worse. But then from there, you want to seal the crack, right? So we use a 2-part system. We use a polyurethane injection where we actually drill holes into the wall and we inject it with a polyurethane. Kind of looks like melted plastic is the best way I can describe the look of it, but it binds right to the concrete. And then we actually put what's called a carbon fiber shield over it. So it's like this big kind of black skirt that covers the whole crack entirely from head to toe. And then that gets that polyurethane around that as well. So it kind of creates like a double shield, if you will, for the crack. And, again, assuming you do everything correctly to remove that pressure that's causing that crack, and then you get that seal done, you should never have an issue again.
Okay, so you're talking about vertical cracks. Because, I mean, knowing the history of the place, when you're buying a home, you have no idea why the crack was there. The owner doesn't know.
Sure.
So you're kind of going in blind. So there's some vertical, there's some horizontal. So
horizontal is a structural issue, and that's not, typically we don't even touch those. That's when I say, hey, go with a structural engineer. You shouldn't have horizontal cracks. So the cracks that we repair, which are the only ones that any legitimate basement waterproofer should be doing, are the vertical ones, and specifically on the wall, not the floor itself. If you have a horizontal crack, or if you have a Y-shaped crack, that's when you're talking some serious structural issues, and you need to reach out to a structural engineer at that point. And now you're talking about potentially repouring columns or foundations.
And you guys connect people with them? Do you guys have any?
So I'm still looking for a good structural engineer because I do not refer anybody unless I've done business with them and know them and trust them with my own life. So if I don't have that person, you will not get a referral from me. So I don't have anybody that, unfortunately, I've made that great connection with. Admittedly, I also haven't had many intros with structural engineers. So if you do know one, Camille, I'd be happy to get to know them.
Okay.
But no, I mean, it's, the other thing too is my business operates in the entirety of Massachusetts and Rhode Island. So some of those guys are a little local, they don't want to travel too far. If they're in Dartmouth, they might not want to go to Quincy or, Quincy to Worcester or whatever it might be. So with that being said, I don't have anybody, but that is the recommendation that will be made is, okay, you have a horizontal crack, you have a Y crack. This isn't the job for me. You need to get someone out here to look at this and make sure the structure is actually safe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that crack. You said you break the crack so you can actually be able to get into and fill it out.
Yeah. You want to be able to inject on the inside of the concrete as well as the side that we're accessing the crack from.
What kind of liquid or gel do you put
polyurethane.
in? Polyurethane,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
So that goes in and pretty much fills up that area, and it's strong,
super strong. It's so strong that you can't even remove it from the concrete that it binds to. The only way you can actually remove it is by getting a hammer drill and chipping away the concrete that it's binded to. So once it's on there, it ain't coming off. That's it.
Yeah. Why don't they pour that for a foundation?
Good question. Yeah, good question.
You'll never have problems with cracks or anything.
I mean, yeah, that's a little beyond me to answer, but you would think, hey, there's so many issues with how foundations are poured sometimes too, man. It's, I'm not exactly 100% qualified to answer why they wouldn't just go with that, So,
growing up, there was, your parents tell you stuff, and you grow up, and you're like, I wonder if that's true.
Yeah.
There was a building that collapsed or whatever. It was a cement building, and my dad's like, oh, you know what happened? Someone went in while they were pouring the concrete and poured sugar in the...
Oh, I've heard that thing before.
Is that true?
I don't know. I'm not 100% sure. I know that there are things that you can add to the mixture as it's poured that can both strengthen or reduce the strength of it. What those things are in particular, the only one I can think of offhand right now is something called pyrite, because there's a major issue with a couple of different builders in kind of the lower New England area, like Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Mass. I don't want to say who they are, but there are some builders out there that have had some pretty bad foundations poured because of a incorrect pyrite mixture, which has caused a lot of damage. You're talking houses that need to be lifted and have a completely new foundation poured. I go out to these houses, they have over, 5 to 10 cracks. At that point, it's like, you're not just going to throw crack repairs up everywhere, because I'll be here next year probably doing another 3 or 4. At that point, you need to seriously consider the safety of the building, and get that assessed.
So I don't understand the carbon fiber that goes on. Why is that there? Since if you close the crack up,
yep.
Why?
It's simply an additional layer of protection. That's all it is. So carbon fiber, the one we use in particular, it's like a sheet that rolls out, and it's like very, very thin woven thread. It's very durable. So it just adds an extra layer of protection when we're putting that epoxy over it. Plus, it kind of makes it look like a clean finish. If you don't put that carbon fiber up, you kind of just, again, it almost looks like Gorilla Glue in a way. So imagine having a crack with 7 feet with just Gorilla Glue all over it, and it doesn't look that nice. The carbon fiber kind of has a somewhat sleek appearance to it, and it just adds maybe an extra 10 to 15%, protection for you.
Yeah. And it's cool, like when you're doing a home inspection, you're like,
that's carbon fiber.
Carbon fiber.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Exactly. Yep.
I hope they did a good job behind it.
Yeah.
It looks cool on the outside, but who knows?
Yeah. Again, the carbon fiber is not a major part of doing the install. In fact, a lot of crack repair people don't even really use carbon fiber. But if you're, when you're looking at my crack repair when it's finished, you've got that polyurethane injected. You have it kind of along the sides of the crack for a few inches on each side. You get the carbon fiber shield over that. And then there's another layer of epoxy. So it's just, it's barrier on barrier on barrier to make sure that this thing's going to be safe.
Awesome.
And work.
So now it's waterproof on the inside. I'm assuming the crack is also on the outside.
Yes. So that's why you inject it, so that polyurethane pushes through. As opposed to hiring an operator to come in and dig out the front of your house, we find that just pre-drilling holes up the column and then injecting the polyurethane all the way through. Listen, no one cares what it looks like under the soil on the outside. So if it's puffed up and fluffed up or whatever on the outside, that's fine. Okay. We know how much polyurethane we need to inject per foot to know that we're getting that polyurethane to go all the way through to the other side. In theory, let's say you had us do a crack repair and you did have someone come and dig out your foundation. You're just going to see it's going to look like a bunch of Gorilla Glue that's essentially popping through on the other side of the crack from the outside.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. So you push a lot.
It pushes all the way.
Okay.
You need to. Yeah.
So around the house, around the foundation, on the outside, what do you recommend people do? Like gravel and mulch?
I mean, mulch is fine. Anything is, I don't really recommend gravel. If you put gravel right up against the foundation, I mean, granted, if you have good overhang from your roof line, if you have good downspouts and stuff, it's not that problematic. But putting gravel right against the edge of the foundation allows for all that water to wick right down. And then now it's building up pressure. So when you're looking at a foundation, there's something that they call a capillary break. Okay. So under the floor of the foundation, there's crushed stone, clay, sand, whatever it is. There's usually a little bit of space too there. It's like an air gap. It could be anywhere between sometimes a few inches to about a foot. That area is left open like that so that water can pass through and not create so much pressure instantaneously, right? So when you put that crushed stone around the foundation, you're inviting that water into that capillary break, and you're just basically allowing it to fill up faster and cause pressure quicker. So really what you want against your foundation is typical stuff, soil, mulch, all that stuff. But as long as it's grading away, you're looking at your house like a big box. You have soil against your house. You just want it to go away from the house on all sides. That's all. So you don't need anything special to do that. You can go with your typical landscape stuff, dirt, loam, whatever you want to call it, mulch.
Someone has water in their basement. They call you guys, and what do you guys do? Like what's...
So we do a free visual assessment. Okay. So we go out to the property. Typically, if you call my office for an inspection, me or my business partner or the inspectors here will be out there within 2 or 3 days. Once we get out there, we'll assess the property from outside to the end. So the first thing we always look at is what can I do or suggest on the outside that's going to help you prevent this from entering your home on the inside. And then we'll look at the inside of the house, figure out what we need to do from there. There's always a good, better, best with basement waterproofing, right? So maybe it does start with just a crack repair and the gutters and the grading for outside. Maybe we go with a full perimeter French drain. Maybe we put a French drain just along the wall where the water's coming in. Maybe we put encapsulation material up, which is like a vapor barrier that would go drape down your walls and drape down your floor. There's always kind of like a tiered system with how well you want your basement waterproofed. It's just, what is your situation that you're dealing with? If I get a guy that calls me and says, hey, listen, when it rains a few inches out, I get a tiny, tiny puddle in this one corner. Okay. And we check off everything like downspouts are fine, grading's fine, right? I'm going to say, okay, well then maybe you're in a high water table. We just have to manage this water that's already going to be invited here anyways, just as sump pump could do. Right. But if I have another person that says, hey, I've got water in every single corner and I've cracks all the way through my floor all over the place. That is when you need a full perimeter French drain. We find that the interior French drain, when you install French drain, for those people that don't know, French drains go underneath the fountain. The two different types is interior and exterior. Interior goes on the inside, right along the perimeter of the foundation. And then the exterior just goes right on the outside, but you have to dig up everything around your house. Okay. Exterior French drains fail pretty often. They fail every 10 to 15 years. And it's because they are exposed to the elements outside versus interior French drains can last almost the life of the house, if not definitely the life of the house. Once they're in there, they're in there. The only thing they have to worry about is when the water comes in.
Or replacing the pump.
And all that, which is easy, right? Replacing a pump and stuff is easy, but no, these French drain systems, and the ones we use are great products. They're actually called Great Products, but it's GRATE. And they're made by the family that originally made French drains. And so we really think they're the best of the best. And so that's one thing that we do tell people, whether you're going with just a sump pump or the top tier of full encapsulation, sump pumps, French drain, everything, we're always going to recommend to go with their products, because when you're dealing with basement waterproofing issues, you really don't want to cheap out.
Yeah.
You know?
So what if it's not from the outside? What if,
Like a
little Timmy story. Little Timmy used the bathroom, clogged it up.
Yep.
They're all heading out to go on vacation for the weekend. They come back. Oh my gosh, the basement's flooded.
Then they don't need a sump pump or French drain or anything like that.
So what do you guys do in that situation?
So that's more of a disinfectant water mitigation job. So what we would do is if we come in and there's several inches or several feet of water, we pump that water out, and then we apply disinfectant in the area to make sure that no mold or bacteria grow. And then we have it tested to make sure that everything's fine. And at that point, if little Timmy just backed up the toilet, then that's an easy fix. But if little Timmy broke the toilet or, did something in the shower and knocked the pipe loose or whatever it might be,
my gosh.
Well, then, the first thing you're going to want to do is actually get a plumber in there and solve that part of it. And then we'll come in and be able to, mitigate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Goodness, that's a nightmare walking into that after a vacation.
Yeah, that has not happened to me, thankfully, but it's happened to a handful of people I know. So, no as clients, unfortunately. Yeah.
So you guys deal with mold, because if that happens over the weekend, could mold have
So
grown?
typically mold can grow within 48 hours. Yeah. So, if Timmy did that on a Friday and they're back on that Sunday night and they call me on Monday, there's a high chance they might have a little bit of mold already growing. Yeah.
Okay. So you empty the water and then you check it out and make sure there's no mold.
Well, so no matter what, in a situation like that, you're going to want to empty the water, and then you are going to want to spray a disinfectant. We use something we use a product by Fiberlock, which is a company that does like fungicides and disinfectants and stuff like that. So we would apply that throughout all the surfaces that the water touched, especially because if it's toilet water, if he had gone to the bathroom in that, it's like, okay, now you're risking, bacteria everywhere. So we treat for that. And then we treat in the air as well. So we do this Fiberlock product will be sprayed on all the surfaces that the water touched. And then we spray another airborne disinfectant that gets introduced as kind of like a fine mist or like a fog, if you will. And that will fill up the area entirely like a cloud. And this will make sure that we didn't miss anything at all.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do they have to leave the house when they do that?
No, they just can't be in the area while we're working. Okay. So while we're working, and then after the application is made, depends on the severity of it. Like if there wasn't much mold or anything like that noticed, they could go back in there in a couple hours. But if we went down there, say it was a finished basement and there's, mold going up 4 feet everywhere, then no, I'm going to tell them to stay out of there for 48 hours, because we're probably going to apply a little bit more of that product. Everything we do use is non-toxic to, humans, animals, and plants. Yeah. But it's just a precautionary measure to tell them, hey, you don't need to be down there, so just don't go down there while we're doing our thing.
Wow. And you guys help with not only waterproofing a basement, but also with mold, because that happens with flood.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. All the time. Yeah. I would say mold is probably the bigger part of our business, because we don't just do, flooded basements. It's in kitchens, it's in bathrooms, it's in bedrooms, it's in ductwork, it's in attics.
All the time.
God, it's in attics everywhere. Yeah.
People don't even know they have mold in the attic.
Yeah. And a lot of times that's, not at the fault of the homeowner. It's actually, a lot of what I see is actually building code not standing the test of time. So a fun fact, my grandfather who raised me was a building official for 30 years. He owned a construction company as well. And, he'd be the first to tell you, listen, we think we know what we're doing. And then 15, 20 years later, we realize we didn't know what we were doing. That's just human civilization in general, right? But a lot of these things haven't stood the test of time. One of the funny things I point out to people, and they look at me like I'm crazy, is, having a bathroom exhaust fan. Exhausting that into the attic was absolutely fine until about 10 years ago, not even. And then they were like, wait a minute, this is a problem. It's like, duh, of course it's a problem. You're if you got a teenager running an hour and a half shower and they're just pumping all of that humidity up there, of course it's going to rot something. But for whatever reason, for decades, builders were like, yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Again, it's like, I tell it to most people and people are like, well, that's common sense. You would think, but this is what it is. So I tell a lot of people that, specifically with attics, when they're dealing with mold in an attic, it's not the contractor, it's not even the building official as the individual. Yeah. It's not the home inspector, it's nobody's fault. It's just, listen, if this house is 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, it went through a series of updates with building design, And maybe some of those updates just didn't really fit together. They didn't really work together. I see that a lot as well. A lot of people, I don't know if they know this, but in the late 70s was a very big movement for builders to start building both commercial and residential buildings with the purpose of retaining heat and energy, right? And so when that happened, we ended up creating kind of a bit of a mess with certain buildings because certain buildings were too buttoned up. And then that's what causes a lot of the issues that I can help you with,
Did I miss anything?
Miss anything in general?
In asking, in the questions that I asked.
No. The only thing I don't really care too much. They can obviously go on our website, but just radon mitigation, would be the only one that I'd like to bring up or say something of, which I kind of said that earlier. So no, I'm good.
Yeah.
I mean, if any of your realtors have, get flagged for radon, obviously have them just give me a call. We don't do the testing. So we always have Sam or another home inspector do that. But for the mitigation installation, we can do that.
So real quick about that water radon, do you guys, radon in water, especially in well, do you guys have a solution for that?
Radon in the water?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've came across that issue yet. Typically, we just get the test back from home inspectors that we use and network with.
Yeah.
But
so that's
radon in the water. Yeah, that's in the air. And at that point, you're essentially just putting a pipe through the floor of the foundation and a fan on the outside that draws that air from under that area I talked about, which is what we call the capillary break. Mm. It pulls the air out of that space because that's where the radon's building up. And then it just exhausts it, vertically out of the house. We basically create a chimney for it. It's a 4-inch pipe that rides up along the side of the building or the corner of the building, and it goes up a few feet above the nearest window or doorway, so that there's no risk of that gas coming back in. Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, the water one is, we have it at our
I've
house.
heard that before.
I drink it every day.
The radon-filled water?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a filtration system?
Yes, but it...
but it can't do much for that?
No. Just when you shower, the steam is radon.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I hold my breath when I shower.
Get out.
And then get out. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. No, I have not seen that. Yeah. No kidding. Do you have a well, you said? Mm-hmm. Is it like an old well?
The basement has radon, so we got that mitigated.
Sure, yeah.
But when we tested the water, it also had radon.
Interesting.
But you can drink it. It's fine.
Yeah.
Just when it steams. So
okay.
When you're boiling water.
I guess that makes sense, right? Yeah.
The dishwasher running.
Into the air.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah, I haven't had that call yet. To be completely frank, I don't know if I'd even be suitable to handle that. I mean,
probably water filtration company would.
I mean, I would think that. Yeah, I would think that. But you are talking about a gas that's just probably, pushing right underneath the well. And so in theory, I would think you actually would want your own type of fan system to remove that. But I haven't tackled that one yet. Maybe next time we'll talk about that. I don't know.
So how do people find you guys?
So we're on Facebook, Green Home Solutions. We have a couple of different landing pages of North Attleboro, Hopedale, and Worcester, Massachusetts. They can go on there. Google's a great way. If you type in Green Home Solutions, we should be one of the first ones to pop up. If you type in mold remediation, we should be one of the first ones to pop up. Same with waterproofing. My information will be available to you and anyone in your office. So, you can always give me a call at my direct line, which is 401-744-4312. I am reachable by email, tanner.guimond@ghs.com. And that's pretty much it.
Awesome. Thank you for stopping by.
Thank you, Camille. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
My agent's got a squad. We all in the zone. In-house help, so they ain't doing it alone. They focus on clients, negotiating win, while the back end's hand 'em, man, that's how we spin. I hand 'em business, watch 'em all climb.